Hello everyone, my name's Graeme Hopkins. I'd like to welcome you to the Be Empowered Show. And the Be Empowered Show is really all about the ability to feel connected to your own truth as being or feeling separate from it. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Gabriel Gonsalves from Cape Town in South Africa. And Gabriel, I'd like to welcome you to the Be Empowered Show.
Thank you very much, Graeme. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you today.
Gabriel, since I'm not the foremost in pronouncing foreign languages, for a start, did I get your name pronounced correctly?
Yeah. You did get that one right, but you didn't get right that I was from Cape Town, because I'm not. I'm originally from Venezuela, from Caracas, Venezuela. I grew up up until I was 14 in Venezuela, and then I moved to the U.S. where I learned English. So I am a Cape Town transplant.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about that as we go. Gabriel, I'd like to start off, since this show is all about feeling connected to a higher truth or feeling connected to your own true self, I'd like to ask you a question. Is there ever a point in your life where you actually felt disconnected? And then tell me how you overcame that.
Okay. Sure. You know, I have a particular way of looking at this thing of feeling connected or disconnected. The truth is, Graeme, I experience disconnection every day, all the time, several times during the day. And my constant work is just becoming aware of those moments during my day when I'm really disconnected. You know, I look at it from the perspective of being connected, as being really present in the moment, as being, aligned with my higher truth and so forth. But it has to do with the feeling of almost, think of it as a computer that is plugged into the internet, that is connected, or a computer that is disconnected from the internet, and it thinks that it's everything and it's trying to do everything by itself, and so it kind of then goes into a bit of a panic. Oh my God, how am I going to get to www, Facebook, that kind of thing. It's like, how am I going to make this happen? So I experience this connection every day, all the time, and my daily work actually is to have a group of practices that increase that or allow me to connect. Now, the interesting thing is that the moment I realize I'm disconnected, at that moment, I could not be more connected. Yeah, and that's what I think it's really beautiful about just being aware. Now, you're asking me the question, when have I been more disconnected? Well, there have been periods in my life where there was no connection. The moment I'm aware that I'm disconnected, that's at that moment, as I said, I cannot be more connected. But I think the problem for me was those periods of my life, and I'm happy to share them with you, where I wasn't even aware that I was disconnected. So, some people call that the disconnection from the disconnection. So I'm happy to talk about, some of them if you want me to. It'll probably bring up quite a bit of shame by speaking about them.
Now, I think your answer thus far has been one of the best I've ever had to that question. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It really is a moment-by-moment proposition, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. At any given moment. I mean, right now, this moment, for example, when we met a few weeks ago, I was sharing with you, I'm going through a process of basically of rebirth and giving birth to a new business structure, a new way of being in the world as it relates to the work that I'm here to do. And so this whole month has been a month of planning, preparing, designing, vision, and connecting with the vision. And And every day, as I'm doing things, I'm constantly asking myself, well, is this in alignment with this vision that I'm creating? You know, is this connected to that? Because sometimes I realize, now this is the old me. This is not in alignment with the new aspect of myself that I want to express. So then I have to let go of that completely and be in a sense of in a space of a void. So it's happening a lot. I mean, this past few days, I've been feeling that sense of disconnection, you know, with the work that I'm doing, especially when the new is emerging. Think of it in terms of, you know, like if I'm on the third floor of a building, and then I made a decision to move to the fifth floor. So I'm not living in the fifth floor. I got my new apartment in the fifth floor, but I still miss my third, you know, floor apartment. I'm still connected to that. I'm still attached to that. I'm still kind of behaving with you know, like acting if I had my little refrigerator. Now in the fifth floor, I have a much larger refrigerator, but I go to the shopping center and I buy little stuff because in my previous apartment I had less space for that refrigerator. So I haven't really fully connected with the new reality that I'm creating. I'm still acting from the old. You know, so you can even talk about that being a way of being disconnected, not disconnected from my greater truth, my soul, my heart, whatever you want to call it, but also connected with what I'm creating, with the new reality that I'm stepping into.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to tell the folks about our meeting 2 weeks ago, because I've kind of watched. Gabriel's got a website, www.heartintelligencecoach.com, and I've often seen his smiling face and thought to myself, yeah, I really like this guy. And then a mutual friend suggested that I interview Gabriel, and it took a bit of time, but by the time I got round to doing it, I emailed him, and he emailed back and said, I live in South Africa. And I thought to myself, wow, that's cool. I'm actually doing a trip to South Africa, to Cape Town, the very next day.
Next day. Amazing.
Yeah, so that was one of those little instances that I call synchronicity. And Gabriel, I'd like to share with you and the folks listening that in my 5th interview with a guy called Ron Kaufman, a similar thing happened with him. And when I told the story, he said this, quote, "We are often staggered at an event we label as synchronicity, yet we are all connected to each other at the same time." Synchronicity is ongoing all the time. It's just that we are now becoming more aware of it.
Yeah.
Finish quote.
Yeah.
And that event where we could meet in person was also very special, in that in some way it was meant to be.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed our time together. I walked away with a lot of insights, and particularly, you know, one of the things I love is in my life is when I meet somebody with whom the energy, it's very synergistic, and I walk out from the meeting, from the breakfast or whatever, like more inspired, happier, joyful than I was when I started it. And also when I get the sense of like there's enough things I can express or share. I still want to share more. It kind of like leaves me wanting more. And I experienced that with you when we connected. I was like, oh, it's almost like when to use the metaphor, of like summer lovers. When they meet at a place where they're not supposed to meet, and then they connect very deeply, and then one of the lovers have to leave, and then there's like, oh, I still wanted to realize this love. It's the same thing, but not in a romantic way. At a synergistic, well, I just say at a deep human connection. It's like, I wanted to spend more time with him. It's that kind of thing, and I experienced that with you, Graeme.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it was amazing that you knew one of the waitresses, and now our meeting went from a 1 hour breakfast to 2 hours, and then it was getting on towards 3 hours, and then the waitresses were all amazed when we left that we were so deep in discussion. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that when in a really busy hotel, because it's travelers are going everywhere. Everybody's rushing. You got airlines, you got tour operators. It's like everything was blocked out, and we're just in this intimate, very intense space. It was
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah.
So, Gabriel, tell us a little bit about your background and how you have become such a successful coach.
Hmm. Well, I was originally raised, as I said, in Venezuela, in Caracas. I grew up. I come from a family of 7 brothers and sisters. And talking about disconnection, it was a home where I felt very disconnected, where I never really felt I could really be myself. I'd say, you know how they, in every family, they have they call it a black sheep of the family, right? Well, I was not. I was the white sheep of the family. My brother Juan, it was almost a twin brother in the sense that we're only 9 months apart. He was the one. He was a troublemaker. I mean, my brother, he would set elevators on fire. He was just a troublemaker, and so it's like I think I was the one in the family that was that held the other polarity. I was the same, the angel, the guy who hardly spoke, hardly ever asked for anything. I was always reading books, sort of lived in my own world. I got teased a lot, and I got bullied a lot also by my older brothers. So I grew up in a home where I didn't really feel safe, and where I didn't hear my father ever say it, I love you, and really longing to connect with others, but not really feeling safe that I could trust. And so what's really interesting is that for a long time I actually felt ashamed or regretted that was what my upbringing was about, up until 14, that I left to go to school in the U.S. But these days, when I look back, I realize that I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be coaching people today, especially at the level of the heart, which is the level of connection, if I had not experienced that kind of a childhood. Because it was that longing, that desire to connect with others deeply, that's really what drives me in many ways. It's I talk about how my 3 top values in life are love, creativity, and freedom, pretty much in that order. And that love for me is that connection. So it is a desire to connect with somebody deeply. For me, another word for love is connection. Because otherwise it becomes it's just a concept. So when I connect with somebody very deeply, it's a way of love. It's a way of expressing love. It's a language of love. In fact, it's the medium of love. Unless that connection is there, then they cannot really possibly be love. When people say, I've fallen out of love with this person, what's really has happened in many ways is the connection has been slowly withering. Because the truth is, if that connection grew in many ways, in intimacy, what you would experience is a sense of greater love, actually. And that doesn't mean that the other person may not, be wanting different things from you, but I'm talking about just the essence of what is love. So I grew up in a home where that wasn't there, and I think it was the desire to connect with. I just kind of caught myself saying that wasn't there, and it's not true. I say my recollection of it was that it was not there. But the truth is, there were also many moments when my mom loved me, when she held me, when she caressed me, when she bathed me, where I had I had a nanny named Sarah, who also stepped in to provide that nurturing and caring. But it's interesting, I don't remember a lot of those things. I have a tendency, as in my human quality, to put a lot of emphasis on the negative stuff and then a disconnection. But I think it was those moments of feeling very disconnected and bullied and not really being able to be free to express myself what drove me to pursue a career first in acting as an actor, and with the intention of really being self-expressed, and a quest for authenticity, really, which is really also just, again, it's all about self-expression.
The way I see that, Gabriel, in regards to love, is that the love that we experience at the human level is more than likely conditional, whereas the connection that we're talking about is an unconditional love. There is no condition to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I have I realized that I grew up with this kid within me. My nickname, my full name is José Gabriel, Joseph Gabriel. And so the nicknames in Latin America or in Italy for anybody named Joseph or José is Pepe. So I grew up as little Pepe. Yeah. And so when there was a time in my life when I did a lot of inner child work, and so my inner child's name is Pepe. I've actually drawn him, and I strive to, talking about connecting with that little Pepe all the time. And I forgot where I was going with this. I was going to go with this somewhere, but then I kind of went off a tangent. But I guess what I wanted to get at was that little Pepe inside of me felt alone, felt he didn't really have somebody that he could that could really get to know him deep. My father, Graeme, I remember once had a conversation with me where he literally told me, he said, Gabriel, Joseph Gabriel, as he used to call me, I'm really worried about you because you don't have a personality, and I want you to have a personality if you have to, for you to be successful in life. And so I'm going to do what I can to help you have a personality. And remember, as a kid at that time, like thinking, my dad's going to give me a personality. He loves me, but then at the same time, I remember feeling there's a part of me feeling just unloved. Because it's like, what does he mean I don't have a personality? What I've come to understand back in the day is that what he really meant was I didn't have the personality that he had, that he wanted, that he was comfortable, that he wanted for me. So I wasn't really loved and appreciated for who I really am. And so in my coaching work, one of the things that drives me is to create a safe space where the person can become more themselves, where they can actually take off their mask, because the word personality, it's a Greek word, means persona, means a mask. They can take off their mask and they can really allow themselves to be really fully who they are, with their imperfections, with their vulnerabilities, with their greatness, with their awesomeness, all of that. And so every time I coach somebody, I've come to realize that what drives me is the intention or the purpose of holding a safe space where I can just unconditionally love them. And by doing that, it's almost like I'm healing the little Pepe inside of me. I'm holding a space that I didn't feel was held for me when I was a kid. Very often these days, whenever I meet, a 3-4-year-old, 5, 6, they grown up, a lot of, especially the community that I surround myself with kids that are really given permission to be fully self-expressed. And when I look at them and I reaffirm them, I go, shit, I wish I would have had this. I wish I would have been free to color my hair and paint my face and do all these things that these kids, or do these days. It's like I couldn't do any of that. If I did it, I would have been called a little faggot, little, whatever. I was just being all kinds of names, just to wear bright color pants or, whatever. And so so my work then, what drives that is the deep desire of connection, and then ultimately providing that safe container where somebody can be really loved for who they really are to the best of my ability. And in working with a client, what's really interesting is that they heal, and then also I heal, I grow. That's why I think that I have one of the best jobs in the world, because I get to grow and heal myself and get paid on top of that while I help other people do the same.
Gabriel, that's a really interesting concept about a personality meaning a mask. Can you go into that a little bit deeper?
Sure. When I was little, the big goals I had in life, the big dreams that I had was, one, I wanted to be the Lone Ranger. I noticed the Lone Ranger wears a mask, okay? And he doesn't really show himself, though he helps a lot of people. I also wanted to be the Pope. The Pope, in a certain way, also wears a mask. I mean, he's dressed up as a woman, some would say. But obviously the Pope is just this human who has been exalted to the highest position of power, and with that comes a title and a whole mask. It's like a king, wears a crown. He's on costume. And then I also wanted to be an actor as well. And so interesting is that at some level throughout my life, that's what I did. When I left Venezuela at 13 going into 14, I got into horses and I started riding horses. And I kind of took on this personality or this persona of this cool guy who rode horses for fun. I was the only guy in my high school who got to ride horses for fun. And everybody was very jealous of me. So everybody would say, wow, this kid's personality and what he does, he's the only kid in the school that gets to do this. And after that, I got into acting. And acting is all about wearing mask and personality. And then, many years later, when I came to Cape Town, I started a spiritual community. So I got to experience and express myself. I got to express the Pope inside of me. So I got to wear all these different masks. And I don't think there's any problem with masks. I think that the mask is just like the face that I have right now. It allows me to face the world, see the world. It gives me a point of view. It also allows me to communicate with people. It gives me the opportunity to name things. Say I'm gay, I'm straight, I'm an actor, I'm this. So I think the problem for me starts when I think that that's all I am, where that mask is all that I am, and then I don't see the other aspects of myself. So then I say, I call it my limited ego, my limited personality, whatever you want to call it. But it's when I realize that when I think that's all I am, and then that limits me. And so I come to see personality as something that is really ultimately a creation. Working as an actor for many years, I saw it over and over again in my life and in my work that I could be who I wanted. I mean, I saw people who were actors who were assholes in real life. Assholes in real life. People I didn't like. And then they would go on the stage and they'd do a scene and I would just fall in love with them. And they become this tender, loving person that you just wanted to hug and love. And then the moment they walked away from the stage, they went back to being their same asshole self. And I was just like, wow, what is this? And so I've come to realize that the personality really is the picture I paint, in my canvas, and what I then, show to the world. And that is a creation. It's a creation. It's something that can be created. So anybody that's listening to this, if you don't like your personality, just know that personality is something that you create, and you can change your personality anytime you want to. I mean, I've seen this happen in my own life. and the people that I work with, when people go back to, like I said, ever happened to me, to you, Graham, that you meet somebody like that you haven't seen 4 or 5 years later, and you go, whoa, what happened to this person? It's like they lost weight, they dress differently, they have a different career, their energy is different, and you go, whoa, what happened? Well, they created that. They created that new level of expression, of that new level of mask. You know, think about creative expression, being a mask. Well, your personality is also a work of art. It's how you wanted to create it, really. You know, I think there's a lot of talk, especially in the personal development industry, of wanting to destroy the ego, get rid of the ego, get rid of the personality, saying it's bad. And I'm saying no. You know. No, no, you need it. You need it. You couldn't be having this conversation unless it was. And again, I think the problem is when I over-identify with this personality, and then this personality is what's stopping me from being like really more myself. Like, for example, like if I know deep inside of me that I am magnificent and I came here to be a king, you know, but I keep wearing the mask of this pauper, you know, who's going and acting this way. But I know inside of me that the character that I came here to play, my greatest character, is the one of the king. It's about that. It's allowing my outer layer of this personality, of how I'm showing up, how I'm doing things, to match with the deeper truth inside. I'm going to shut up now because I can feel that you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, would you see it as the personality being like the interface between our heart and our physical world, our 5 senses maybe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. In many ways. Think of it as the, you know, I really love the metaphor of computers and internet and everything, you know. Think of it as a computer. It's a set of possibilities, right? And the set of possibilities becomes the iMac at one point. So it looks like an iMac. It's crunch, you know. It's like big thing, heavy, white, black, red, yellow, you know. And then but within it, there are controls, there are possibilities, there's storage, there's processing, and all of that. So the personality is just simply the outer layer of what that computer, you know, looks like. That may, but not necessarily reflect the possibility or the potential of what that thing can do. Like, you know, I had the opportunity to watch that movie. Have you watched that movie? Oh God, the movie about Alan Turing, the something game, the Imitation Game. Have you had a chance to watch that movie?
No, I haven't.
You know who Alan Turing was?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Alan Turing was the British mathematician and professor, was recruited by the UK government, basically, on a top secret project to crack Enigma. Enigma was the sort of the secret code that the Nazis used, and nobody could crack it. So all their army was destroying, you know, the Allies, and they couldn't figure out this code. So they hired this team, and you know, it's a movie about his life when he got recruited, but he actually designed a machine called the Turing machine, I think it was called, that cracked the code. Yeah. And that machine, it was like the size of, like, it was like at least 5-6 meters, you know, wide, tall, all these cables. You know, now this is like early 1940s. Now this machine was the first computer. You know, it was the father or the mother of all computers, and that's how it looked. You know, but now, you know, a tiny little thing, a little chip, does, you know, 5 million times what that huge thing used to do. So the personality that chip now, it looks like this tiny, slick little thing like this, but it's doing 50 million times more of what that did. So your personality is that little chip. It's what that looks like. You know. So I think the part of the work that we're here to do is to evolve and grow ourselves, so that we're constantly refining, improving, expanding, you know, our personalities with the potential within us. So just like computers are becoming slicker, you know, they're doing things more effectively, more faster. I think part of this evolutionary impulse that is expanding through and by means of us is also wanting our personalities to become more in alignment with that potential, more refined, you know. And instead of using the word refines, what we use is the principles that govern, you know, God or the universe, what do you want to call it. So it wants our personalities to become more loving, more compassionate, you know, more creative, more joyful, because that is the essence of ultimately of what really is the potential or the nature of life itself.
My wife actually watched that movie sometime in the last week, and she mentioned it to me. She said, because I'm not a real movie buff, but she said, you will love this movie. So that's what I'm going to do tonight now.
Yes, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. It's actually, I'd say it's a challenging movie to watch, because obviously it really is a movie about a hero's journey. You know, we spoke about this when you were here. He receives this call to adventure, to go on this journey, and on a journey where his best and his worst comes out. So I think for anybody, for you, talking about you, that you're going to watch it, for you, I think it will bring up a really powerful message of what happens when you make that choice to really stand for what you believe, and see something through the end. Like, you know, like know in your heart that you have the solution to a problem, that you have that just know it, but nobody else can see it. Nobody else can see it on the outside. You know, it's like I'm going through something like that right now as I'm creating a new series of trainings. I'm moving into a space of creating this 3-day deep, intensive training that's really all about leadership. You know, and as I'm going through creating this thing, I know, wow, this is what it's going to do for people. This is what it's going to do for people. This is how it's going to impact people. But there's a part of me that says, oh shit, how am I going to convince people, enroll people into this training? You know, and so that, I think that's it's actually what the training is about. Because part of the training is about, you know, leadership is being able to enroll other people on your ideas. Whether if it's enrolling clients or enrolling supporters, you know, whatever, or enrolling people, you know, to join your organization, your tribe, whatever it is, as employees. I think the process is ultimately the same, and so yeah, definitely watch that movie, because you'll see how far a human being can go in order to enroll other people's on his dream, on his idea, because, you know, that machine was not something they were planning on. There was no money for it, you know, there was no space for it. Yet this man got it in his mind and in his heart that he was a machine that was going to solve this thing, not a human. And he went on to create this freaking machine. You love it.
Gabriel, what I can see about the reason why you're such a great coach is all tied into your past experience. And the point I want to make is, for anybody listening to this, it doesn't matter what you're going through right now. That will one day translate into something that you can use that will bring life to yourself and others.
Absolutely. So, the crap you're going through right now, it's the fertilizer. It's the fertilizer that will nourish the roots of your biggest dreams.
So it's a bit hard to see. It's
very hard to see when you're in the middle of all that shit.
So, given that, can you tell us a little bit about your acting background? Because I can see how advantageous that is to your work right now.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what drove me to become an actor was that I was terrified of expressing myself. As I said, I would grew up in a home where I didn't feel safe to express myself, and so I was terrified of speaking, public speaking. I was terrified of being in front of a room. And what happened was I had just graduated from university. I was 21 years old. My father had my father died on my last year at university. He didn't get to come to my graduation, unfortunately. But at that time, I had a girlfriend and I had a job lined up for me in Venezuela, working in the stock market. And when my father died, um, it really sent me on a quest for what's the meaning of life. That also ultimately led to me breaking up with this girlfriend that I was madly in love with, and I thought I wanted to marry. God, I'm so glad I did, because I know that within 2 years we would have been divorced. Um, and um, and so I got home to Venezuela, and I had my diploma. You know, my father had invested all this money in, all thousands and thousands of U.S. dollars in my education. And when I get back home and everybody's like, well, you're going to take on this job, and da, 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 I said, no, I'm going to become an actor. And everybody was like, what? All these years of your education thrown down the toilet? I'm like, no, the year of my education can never be thrown down the toilet. Um, I'm going to become an actor. And they're like, but you don't know anybody. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm just going to become an actor. So I set up this crazy goal, Graham, and the goal is where I said to myself, within the next 5 years, I am to star in a theater play, in a movie, and in a soap opera. In Venezuela, Latin America is really big on soap operas. And with that in my mind and in my heart, I just started taking acting classes, and then I invited to audition for an acting program with the Venezuelan National Theater Company, and I remember, like, they invited me to this audition, and I had really just only been acting for like less than a month, and I went in, and I don't even know. I think it was probably the worst audition I've ever done, but it was something about me, obviously, that the director liked, and they gave me a 3-year scholarship to study acting and singing and dancing and movement. And so now I just embarked on this journey where now suddenly my whole life was being surrounded by artists and creative self-expression, and that began actually to then create a what do you call it, a platform that eventually led me to audition to a soap opera. And it took me not 5 years, it took me 7 years. But within 7 years, I had produced and starred in a theater play that was quite successful in Venezuela. Actually, the same play that really launched the career of Russell Crowe. It's a movie called The Sum of Us. He plays with Jack Thompson. You're Australian, so these are Australian actors. It's a movie about, it actually comes from, it's a play by David Stevens, about a homosexual young guy whose father gives him permission to fully express his sexuality, yet he doesn't, because he just doesn't believe he really, what do you call it, he's just very ashamed to really express himself. It's a beautiful play. So anyway, so I produced that play, translated it, got the money, starred in it. We had 2 sold-out seasons. I starred in a soap opera. I worked in many soap operas, but I got to be in a soap opera where I played one of the leading roles. That's huge. And then I also starred in a film, 35mm film. It was done in Spanish, based on an old novels, written novel series. So I got to accomplish all of that in 7 years. And at the end of those 7 years, I moved to Los Angeles, because I just felt like, okay, it was all like, okay, tick, 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 tick. I've done all these things. I want to work with the big guys. I want to live in LA. So I really have always been like a big kind of guy. So that's what led me to Los Angeles, where the acting really didn't happen. I took classes and acting, and did most of the stuff that any young actor who's just moved to LA would do. But the truth is that I kept getting work, not so much in front of the camera, but behind the scenes in production, in accounting, in finance. So I just decided that I was going to learn about that aspect of the entertainment industry. And so I spent 7 years in LA, where I did some commercials, where I did theater, where I actually produced a play, produced also a TV pilot that I co-wrote. And but I think that those 7 years was really more learning about the entertainment industry, and also learning to relate with people. So the quest, though, for that acting, the career in acting, was ultimately, though, to express myself. Because what I longed for, Graeme, was, because I never really felt when I was growing up that I was really heard or seen for myself. I had this commanding need to be loved and to be accepted by others. And so acting, I thought I would get that from acting. And the truth is that I really believe somehow that actors were very powerful people, because they get to do what they love. Everybody seems to love actors. We kind of we call them celebrities. We celebrate them. But the truth is that once I experienced that fame, I was on the cover of magazines in Venezuela as a soap opera actor. I couldn't walk to a supermarket without being recognized. I used to have girls, this was my mid-20s, I used to have girls take up their bras and throw them at me, which was a really interesting experience. But the thing I wanted to say was that what really drove me was that I wanted to have that power. And even once I achieved that success, and I was having everything, and people would envy the life that I would have, the truth is, deep down inside of me, I still felt very powerless. Because what I realized now, when I look back, I thought that if I was successful, if I achieved all those goals, I would feel power and people would love me. And then once I achieved those things, I still didn't feel powerful, and I still wasn't really being loved the way I wanted to. I realized I'd been looking for love in the wrong place.
Gabriel,
I think that's really ultimately, just to finish up the sentence, Graeme, I think that's ultimately the desire, or what really drove me to, when the opportunity came to come to South Africa and to leave the entire entertainment industry behind, to go on a deeper spiritual journey of the heart. I think really that's what was driving me. There was a part of me that said, okay, I'm going to go look for this thing, what it really is, instead of Hollywood and fame and drugs and and parties and success. I'm going to look for it in a different place, and that's really that was the beginning of now what has become a 7-year adventure in following what I call the path of the heart, and helping other people follow the same thing.
That's an amazing story, and I really think that this is a good point where we wind this up. And what I'd like to do is to ask you to come back, if you don't mind, and continue the story into the story of what you now do and teach, which is heart intelligence.
I would love to. Thank you very much. Yes.
So really resonating with this story, I'd like to ask you to do a favor. If you could go to the Be Empowered podcast and sure. Leave a testimony on there regarding how this made you feel, and in that way it'll build up this show, and this word will get out to more people as we go forward. So, Gabriel, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story. It's been fascinating, I've found, and we look forward to catching you up in the near future regarding heart intelligence.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, great. That I agree with you, Graeme. This kind of lays down the sort of like the story, the backstory of really what ultimately then becomes the path of the heart. And yeah, and I do think that sharing is important. You know, you asked me to leave you a testimonial, but I'll go ahead and tell you right now that just by sharing with you this today on an early Saturday morning here in Cape Town, and where I am right now in my life in terms of creating the new, you have given me permission to reconnect with where I came from, and with that part of the journey, because I don't talk about this very, very often, and what started it all. So thank you so much for that, because I forget that. You know, we began this conversation talking about feeling disconnected, and I think that for me, reconnecting with some of the things I shared with you today, where I am right now, I needed to do that. So I thank you for the synchronicity, for giving me permission to reconnect with that, because it's ultimately part of why I do what I do. So thank you very much for that, Graeme, for holding the space for me.
And it's been a joy to chat to you. Do you just want to leave a contact where people can get in touch with you, Gabriel, before we close this session off?
Yeah, sure. At my website, www.heartintelligencecoach.com, there's a contact tab or link. You can just go to that, and it'll take you to a form where you can just click on that, type in your message, and I'll get directly to my inbox. I answer my pretty much all my emails, so I will receive that.
Excellent. And or you can go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and download a free ebook there called Know Your True Value and Worth. And I think, Gabriel, you'll agree that we've been talking a lot about that today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it's why you do what you do, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd like to thank everybody, and we wish you all the very best from Gabriel and myself for a future of love, joy, and abundance.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Be Empowered podcast. For more on regaining your power by bridging that gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are, go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and enter your name and email address to receive a free ebook and get notified of any upcoming podcasts. Remember, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world. Changing your energy transforms your life.